I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for attending today's webinar on turnkey personalization strategies for localized marketing. My name is Tim Storr, and I'm the President and CEO of Distribuon. I'm very happy to be with you today and proud to sponsor today's webinar. With me is Ian Michaels, Principal Analyst at Gleanster Research. Welcome, Ian.
Pleasure to be here.
In recognition of how valuable everyone's time is, we're going to jump right into Ian's presentation. Following the presentation, I will spend about 5 minutes introducing Distribuon, and then we'll go to our Q&A session. Now that the stage is set, I will turn it over to Ian Michaels. Ian.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. So we've got a great presentation today, turnkey personalization strategies. That would be a great topic if we could actually give you some insights around personalization. But we're going to layer into this whole localized marketing concept and how you can actually develop some turnkey strategies for localized marketing personalization. Now, I'm really pleased today because Distribuon sponsoring this research really allows me to go in and explore this topic among a variety of different survey data that we've captured. So what we're actually going to look at today is the difference between personalization in marketing in an organization that has a centralized marketing department, which, as you all know, is hard enough, and personalization for a localized marketing environment where a national brand is managed by both corporate marketing and local affiliates and entities in the field. And so, I think I need to help justify what is it about personalization, why are we focused on this, and how far should we take it as marketers? And so we'll explore some of the data and what's going on today, and the data that we capture in our surveys really highlights current best practices. So you're not always going to see these nebulous kind of, oh, it's very difficult to bridge the gap here. We're going to see what organizations that are achieving superior performance are doing today. And then I want to close it out with some recommendations that can help make personalization scalable and hopefully turnkey. I mean, we really want to make this easy because there are two different approaches you can take with personalization, and there is certainly a more complex approach that can deliver more engaging relationships, but sometimes you don't need to go there, and in a distributed environment that may be the case. So today I'm going to share data from 3 different surveys that we captured. This is 984 plus organizations. And I really want to focus on the top here, this localized marketing automation benchmark report that we just published in 2014. We just published it last month. Distribuon is featured in the report, and we have vendor rankings captured by their end users in the report. They did very well. You can actually get that report from them after the webinar is over. But we're actually going to look at and explore some data here, and I just want to set the stage for how Gleanster captures data and we analyze that data because it's very important in the information that we're going to present today. So when we capture respondents from a survey, we actually have a performance-based algorithm that looks at key performance indicators depending on the topic area. In this case, it was response rates, return on marketing investment, and revenue growth. And so we looked at what are organizations that are achieving top performance in those areas. We look at the top 25%, and we classify them as top performers. And we compare those to everyone else, which are kind of your all others or your kind of average organization in the survey data. And what we're essentially providing for you is a way to benchmark what's going on in the market right now that's allowing my competitors to excel in performance, to excel in, kind of and beat me in certain areas. And so that's really important as we start to layer in and look at the data. So I want to start things by setting the stage with the difference between marketing in a centralized organization and localized marketing. And so let's talk about what we mean by local marketing, because I think an argument could be made that all marketing is local marketing. I mean, you're always trying to address the needs of your client or prospect, and you really want to kind of deliver that relevant dialogue with them these days with the empowered consumer who has lots of control over the buying cycle, lots of access to information, lots of access to competitive pricing and things, and so it makes it very challenging for a brand. But in a centralized marketing environment where you really just have one entity managing marketing, personalization is hard enough. You have multiple channels, you have multiple technologies that are helping manage all those different channels, you have different suppliers internally that you've got to manage, and so corporate marketing is very focused on that national or global brand presence. But what makes it challenging in a local marketing setting is you're going to have that national brand and that centralized brand, but you also have local and affiliate relationships that share in the burden of communication with the brand. And these local relationships are targeting a very small subset of your overall target audience. And they have a different level of knowledge, they have a different level of understanding of these core demographic populations of customers. And so when you layer into this and you think about personalization in an environment like this, we classify it as a distributed marketing environment or a localized marketing environment. And in this context, you really amplify all of those challenges, with building the relationship, with managing technology, with managing the investment in your marketing communications. And it makes it very challenging for marketers. And so, how that manifests itself is you have, a consumer who may get email, they may have email distributions or they get direct mail pieces of collateral from that local brand or that the national brand. And those are usually sent by a corporate marketing entity, but they also have a relationship with kind of local affiliates. And where you tend to see this in common industries that you tend to see this in are financial services, insurance, healthcare, franchises, manufacturers, retail, where you kind of have both that corporate brand and the oversight there and then the local marketing entities. And the challenges that arise essentially are when you have local marketers going off and they have some autonomy and they can invest in technologies, you get brand consistency challenges. You get lack of visibility by corporate marketing. They can't see what campaigns are working or how effective those local marketers actually are, and they can't support them as well. And so you have kind of both corporate and local trying to understand the consumer, trying to say, what are their preferences? How do we manage them effectively? Is this person an advocate? What do they typically buy and how often do they buy? And unfortunately, if you don't manage this correctly, what actually happens is to the consumer, if there are brand consistency challenges, if corporate is sending campaigns and local marketers are sending campaigns and they're not aligned, they're often wondering, are these guys working together? Is this the same brand? And it creates a very cumbersome brand experience for the user. And so it's almost a tug of war that happens to address both corporate needs and the local needs of that local relationship. What we want to address that today is how do we actually do this from a personalization standpoint. So this data is coming from our customer experience management survey in Q1 of 14. And just understanding what is the challenge with the customer experience today. We talk about the customer experience quite often and you read a lot about it, but what does this mean? Really how we define it at Gleanster, it's all interactions or potential touch points that a customer may have with your brand. And that includes marketing, that includes sales, that includes service, any type of interaction, the collective interaction is that customer experience. And so this report wasn't necessarily focused on distributed marketers, so I cut the data by industries that were likely distributed marketing environments and company sizes that would likely see these challenges. And I wanted to look at what are the top challenges for the customer experience. And so you see top of the list here is fragmented marketing systems. Well, there's no surprise there when you have corporate and local marketers both investing in separate technologies. They may or may not integrate. And even within corporate marketing, you have different tools that oftentimes don't integrate. Limitations with marketing tools, just the ability to take the data that is available, pull it into a marketing tool, and actually use it to send personalized campaigns is a huge challenge. Segmentation and personalization, a top 3 challenge for the customer experience, and then poor data quality. So that's kind of a more generic view of it. If we actually look at what we found in our localized marketing automation survey, which was Q2 of 2014, this is the report that Distribuon was featured in. We asked local marketers to rank, their top challenges with the local marketing environment. And number 1 primarily came out of senior leadership from the CMO and marketing leadership in the organization. And that is visibility into campaign performance. I just don't know what's going on across my brand, and I can't measure this centrally because I have different systems internally that are managing this. Lack of local expertise. This is a very important concept that we need to explore further from a personalization standpoint, because personalization isn't always easy. And so when you have local marketers or affiliates who may not have expertise in this stuff, they might be the owner or an agent, then you have to figure out how do we layer in and support them from a corporate standpoint to make their life easier. Getting comfortable with emerging tactics and technologies, I think that speaks to that second one, and then consistent metrics and orchestration of multi-channel campaigns. All of these, from measurement through to orchestrating a campaign, are themes that we have to address in personalization. So why is this so important? Why are we exploring personalization? I mean, we've been talking about it for 10, 20 years, and it still seems to be a huge challenge in the market. Well, I thought I would share some stats that I went and collected on how things are changing. So if you're going to help spearhead an investment internally in improving your personalization, these are some of the things that should impact that business case. Number one, this is some information that came out of Radicati Group, and these guys have been covering the email marketing space. They do a fantastic job. They've got some great stats on the use of email. But they had forecast that, consumer-to-consumer email traffic, where it's, our personal email accounts sending to other friends or family, is going to decrease over the next 5 years. And the reason for that is a shift to social media and text messaging. And I think that the important trend here that you need to be aware of is in these distributed marketing environments, we still see a very heavy reliance on traditional marketing channels. They're direct mail and email and some of the core and advertising and core channels that have worked well for the last 20 years. We are now shifting into a new dynamic where you have to meet these consumers head on where they're communicating. And what we're seeing in that new dynamic is things like social media and mobile and kind of layering into this. How do we actually engage our consumer in a non-intrusive way, become part of the conversation, and not trying to sell to them or promote? That's a challenge. So, and in as much, Nielsen says that 78% of consumers are not loyal to brands, partly because we have now smartphones, we have mobile access to information 24/7. They're very competitive when they shop. They can bring phones into stores in the local setting. They can kind of price shop on their phone, and that makes it very challenging. So there's not a lot of loyalty that you can rely on, which means you have to fall back on that relationship, which then layers into the benefits of personalization. Can I build a better relationship and a loyal customer with that relationship? And then finally, we asked marketers, do you believe personalization is going to have an impact on the future of marketing? And 83% said yes, personalization and custom content is really going to be the future of marketing, and it's what they're focused on right now. And so, ultimately, all of these things manifest themselves in one key way. Buyers are fatigued, and they're just increasingly complacent. There are so many marketing messages out there. And I think what's interesting is, here we are, marketers on the phone right now, trying to learn some best practices for our brand. But we're also consumers, and we're also out there becoming fatigued, and we get annoyed when messages don't resonate with us. And so it's kind of like we need to look inside of ourselves at what kinds of things what makes us react to a brand in a positive way, and how do we help our organization in that way. So ultimately, our challenges as marketers have not changed over the last 30 years. And when you look at top 3 priorities for 2014, this comes from the Customer Experience Management Report. We just asked, what are your top 3 focus areas in marketing? And increasing revenue, retaining profitable customers, and reducing costs were the top 3. I think that the top 2 here, increasing revenue and retaining profitable customers, well, we can do a better job at both of those if we can crack this challenge with personalization. If we can really get at how do we engage customers in a more relevant way, then maybe we can start to address both of these, which also means any kind of initiative that you're focused on right now that's going to be tied to these top priorities for your organization is likely to get funding. So from a marketing perspective, as you think about how do I champion this thing, you want to tie your needs as an organization to current desires and goals for the organization. So, if you can kind of say, look, our current infrastructure or our current approach to marketing is incapable of addressing these things, or we're not maximizing the benefit, then you can start to build a business case around personalization internally and taking the right steps. So I don't think there's anyone in marketing who would argue that, the consumer isn't in control these days. And there's this mantra in marketing: the right message, the right time, the right offer, and the right channel. And I feel like that's a pipe dream. I think if you really do that extremely effectively, then the brand can scare the hell out of the consumer. How did you know that I was on the website? How do you know what I was looking at? This is too much for me. And I think that a lot of marketers will kind of stay away from the really nitty-gritty personalization that, you know, number one, because you don't trust the data that is available to you to actually go and send these campaigns. Do you trust that, you know, that David is going to get an email that says, "Hi, David," and not "Hi, Susie," you know, if the quality of the data is suspect? But ultimately, I think we can back up and just think about, you know, the reality here is we need to find simple ways to do this more effectively. So you can start to target more, and you don't necessarily have to deliver one-to-one. You can communicate via the channels that your customers prefer. I mean, stop relying excessively on those traditional channels when consumers are inundated and basically moving into new and emerging channels as a means of communication. So I think when we think about personalization, you need to think about contextual relevance. It's about making that scalable, making it in the context of what that consumer is doing. Can you make your brand slightly more relevant rather than just generic and a mass message? So let's look at some meat behind this concept of personalization. And when I say meat, I say statistics that are suggesting to us that this is something we should be focused on right now. The average open rate on generic communication has declined 4 times over the last 5 years. It used to be 3 or 4% you could expect from, for example, an email campaign. 3 or 4% engagement or response from conversion or open. That has been reduced now to 1% on average. That's what we see in our surveys, that a generic mass email campaign on average gets about 1% or less click-through. So, you know, more and more organizations are fatiguing those lists, and make no mistake, this stuff is still being done today. I don't care about the research that we see that suggests the top performers are doing, you know, more around personalization. People are still buying lists, they're still sending generic messages, they're still sending generic newsletter communications. And the reason for that is because personalization, quite frankly, is difficult. And you already have the infrastructure set up to do this stuff, so it's kind of relying on those legacy tactics over time. But what we've seen in our data from top performers is that personalization in email, for example, drives 2 to 3 times higher click-through rates for top performers. Now, I hate to focus so much on email, but this is one of the easiest areas for us to measure because everyone's doing it. So, you know, if there's any message here, it's that, you know, we have seen measurable value from personalization from organizations that have participated in our surveys. So there's point number one, that there's actually something to this. In our LMA survey, in our Localized Marketing Automation survey, we actually asked local affiliates if they thought that they had a better level of understanding about corporate audiences. 74%, it's almost 8 out of 10, said that, yeah, we believe we understand our our local target audience more so than corporate marketing does. And does that manifest itself in performance that we can actually measure? Well, this is something that came out of Street Fight West Summit in 2013. But the idea that localized executed mobile marketing campaigns drive 3 to 9 times higher engagement when they're executed by local target audiences. That suggests to you that, number one, this is interesting because these are emerging channels, mobile. These are executed by local marketing, and they're exceeding performance by 3 to 9 times of corporate. You know what I mean? So there's clearly something to the knowledge that exists in those local environments and their ability to kind of meet the customer needs and desires more effectively than corporate. And then finally, the digital customer experience, you know, is really a source of competitive advantage for top performers. That's a question we've asked on multiple surveys. We can consistently see that. 86% of top performers indicated that personalization, you know, was a top 3 imperative for revenue growth in 2014. They're linking this idea that driving revenue is going to take personalization. So there's again that bond there when you look at kind of top 3 priorities for your organization that suggests to marketers, hey, we need to be doing a better job with personalization because, number one, we're seeing benefits from doing this more effectively in the different channels we operate in. You know, but number two, outside of the fact that it's intuitively the right approach, we actually can measure it and we can actually see that this is being done better. So I wanted to share some statistics that I thought were very interesting, and this is way back in 2011. This was a study that was published in the Journal of Advertising, and this study looked at 30,000 consumer emails. They personalized those emails in different ways, and then they Then they went back and asked the people who opened those emails about their perception of fatigue after having experienced it. So, they went through this whole statistical study. Bottom line, what you're looking at is this green curve suggests that, when you're sending a low volume of email, even if they're generic, you're likely not going to fatigue a consumer too much. But as soon as that volume starts to build up over time, there's a point where we all, kind of say, whoa, this is too much. It's not relevant to me. I'm done. That's spam. And regardless of whether it's truly defined as spam, because keep in mind, spam is just messages that are sent with no ability to opt out. Whether or not it is spam, that's the perception. And what they found was by personalizing those communications, and the more personalized those communications got, they could actually send more communications without the consumer feeling fatigued, without them actually saying, yeah, really, I felt like there was way too many communications here. If the consumer receives a message that they actually feel is relevant, they're unlikely to trigger that perception of fatigue. And that's really interesting because that actually suggests that if you can do a better job at this, you can actually increase your communication, your frequency of communication with consumers, with your customers and prospects without triggering that spam threshold. And so something we need to think about, and I don't know that we can all get there tomorrow, but I do want to provide some strategies to make this easier. And so we're going to dive into the recommendations in the presentation today. And I wanted to find a way. You always want to kind of back up into a simplified approach. And for distributed marketers, what are some turnkey, what are the pillars to actually executing turnkey personalization? So I came up with 3 S words. Here's a kind of natural analyst approach to the challenge here. But this is a great way to kind of classify and group some of the data that I wanted to share with you and recommendations. And so in a distributed environment where you have that corporate and those local entities and the dynamics between those two, personalization has to be strategic. You have to link it to goals for the organization. And you really need to think about both corporate marketing goals and your local marketers, because they have targets that they have to address. And if corporate marketing isn't helping meet those in a scalable way, then they're not going to listen to what corporate is doing. And so that's a big part of the challenge right now is local marketers kind of being renegades and saying we need some autonomy. You're not helping us meet our targets as a local affiliate here. So in as much, from a strategic standpoint, the goals have to be purposeful. They have to be realistic. You've got to make sure that personalization is realistic for the organization, that is something that can be embraced. Scalability, it needs to be automated. It has to meet the needs of both corporate and local marketers. And then personalization needs to be simple. It's got to be low risk. You can't, it's not realistic to say, hey, you've got to go clean up all that data, and then you've got to make that data available in a very personalized way in different marketing channels. No, we want to make this low burden, low cost, and a minimal learning curve, because remember, one of the top challenges in the local environment is their expertise, their ability to actually execute these campaigns. So I'm going to explore each one of these boxes further, but we're going to start with strategic. And from a strategic perspective, I think the first thing we have to explore is what are we actually personalizing? And there are a lot of different channels that you can focus on now. And you have all those traditional kind of direct mail and print, and I just listed a few of them here, and there are obviously dozens that marketers are focused on and they're spending money in. But if we think about this, a lot of times when I do advisory, marketers will ask me, hey, I don't know what channels I should go out and engage my customers in, and I don't know which ones they're going to care about, in which areas we should be focused on from an investment standpoint. So most organizations are doing some local SEO and might be doing some email and content and direct collateral and direct mail. But if you're thinking about, well, what channel do I really need to be focused on, I think you need to back that into the customer. I mean, the customer's experience is what your customers expect it to be. How do they expect to engage with your organization across these different channels? And the question is, are there areas that they do expect or would not feel or feel it would be appropriate for your brand to be engaging with them that you're not doing well today, that you maybe you don't have web microsites, or you don't have a mobile presence, or that your video is lacking? And that's how you can kind of start to understand how should we think about this? And so I'm going to layer into this in between all these different insights, some recommendation slides. And I want to just kind of right there and then address some recommendations that you should be thinking about. So, if the first question from a strategic standpoint is, how do you define what to personalize? Which channels do we focus on? I think number one, you've got to ask your customers what channels they prefer to engage in. Have you actually spent the time to say, would you prefer I continue to engage in the channels that I've been using over the last 10 years with you? Or do you care if I engage in other channels like social or microsites and things of that nature? You need to monitor web behavior. Sometimes you can kind of see some of the trends that are going on by looking at the time, the location, and even the access to your website on mobile devices. And you can actually see some of this stuff via web analytics. You can see consumers are actually accessing, or if they're likely accessing your website while they're in the store or in a local presence. You need to benchmark your competition. Go look at what channels that your most successful competitors are engaging in, and then are you doing it as well, and are you doing it well? And that's something you need to really think about, because the better job that they do in those channels, the harder they're going to make it for their customers to switch to your brand. They just don't want to, because they're doing a good job. And then you want to monitor social media. I think there are lots of trends you can gather and insights from social media. It's like a giant billion-member focus group. And so you can take some of the tools that are out there, narrow down kind of some analysis, figure out sentiment, or figure out what people are talking about and what areas may be relevant. Because sometimes it doesn't make sense to engage in social media, depending on your industry. But if you find that a lot of people are very vocal about things that matter to your brand or other brands that are related to yours, then you better step it up, because that's really important to think about. So then we want to layer into this, not just from a strategic, what are we personalizing, but who's actually doing it. And for a centralized marketing function, it would just be corporate marketing. They would be managing this stuff, which frankly is hard enough. It's really difficult. You're investing in different technologies to manage some of this, but in a distributed marketing environment, you now have to layer into this those affiliate and local entities. And guess what? Those individuals might actually be personalizing all these channels as well. And that's where the complexity of this environment really kind of starts to become visible, is the fact that a salesperson or the agency, a local relationship with an agency, or the owner may be trying to personalize content or email or a microsite for their local target audience. And if corporate is not connected into that and they don't have visibility of what's going on, that's going to be a huge challenge. And let's talk about this dynamic between corporate and local. And in a corporate environment, they're really tasked with brand consistency, with making sure the brand is represented appropriately, the right logos, the right terms and phrases and nomenclature and colors, etc. And in as much, they're very focused on visibility, they're focused on compliance and governance. Depending on the industry, in financial services or healthcare, that could be huge. Personalizing, how you're communicating with your different regions or local audiences from a governance standpoint may be very important, and that's on corporate, to really make sure that they're doing that and managing that. And also, corporate wants to help local marketers. They're there to support and share in the investment in many cases, and they want to do what they can to make life easier. And unfortunately, one of the things that tends to happen is corporate will lock things down and say, look, we need you to centralize everything here because we don't trust that it's going to happen effectively in the local setting. And so from a local standpoint, you have the desire for more autonomy. You want flexibility in your messaging and communications. You understand that target audience, corporate may not, and you want the ability to intimately react with them. And in a local setting, you really do rely on corporate to help with some of these efforts, to help support, and maybe even it could be shared money or the messaging and communication, et cetera. So, what are some recommendations for personalizing, who's actually personalizing for your organization? Well, I think you kind of need to, before we understand how you do it, you want to back up and understand it. If you can kind of get at what you need to personalize, let's say you could prioritize a list and say, well, we need to do a better job personalizing our print collateral in our local stores, or personalizing email or microsite, or whatever it is. You can create a very simple matrix for your organization where you have the roles at the top that might actually need to personalize things to do a better job at driving revenue for the organization. And then on the y-axis, you have those different channels. And maybe it's not a checkbox. Maybe it's a 1 or a 2, and you're prioritizing these efforts. And you're figuring out what things you could do as an organization that would have a bigger impact quickly. Then you back into how to do that, how to do it fast and scalable and low risk and simple. So interesting little approach. It's I think it's kind of obvious, but very few organizations are actually doing that. Okay, so let's understand scalability in a distributed environment. If personalization must be scalable, how do we actually do that? Well, you have all these different channels, and what we've seen from the data that we've captured is the average local marketing organization manages 5 to 7 redundant tools. And that means, corporate marketing is investing in email marketing, and maybe affiliates are as well. And so if we look at kind of the investments that do actually happen, unfortunately, even in corporate, they don't integrate. You oftentimes are investing in core channels, email, service providers, customer data mart, website, the mobile. They're not connected and they're not integrated. And when you have very simple to implement kind of on-demand technologies that local marketers can, in their low cost, can go and invest in, you get these renegade investments in solutions, and that's what kind of leads to some of the challenges, lack of visibility and brand consistency. And so I want to back up, because one of the big themes that I've seen in the advisory work that we do with distributed marketing organizations is marketers sometimes don't think of themselves as distributed, number one. So, you're a marketer and you operate in this environment, and it's just a nuance of your job as a marketer. But you may not know that there are actually technologies designed to help with a distributed marketing environment, and they are not the same technologies that you would invest in a centralized or a core corporate marketing function. So I want to talk about some of the trends and kind of build a story here for you, because I think it's really important to understand, especially internally. You may understand this as a marketer, but I think if you can drive this messaging through to your CEO or your CIO and help them realize that some of the technologies you may have invested in over the last 10 years probably won't scale for a personalized approach in local marketing. So, years ago, and I'm starting on this on-premise, the small bullet on the lower left there, we had, kind of a few core channels. They were traditional channels, direct mail, email, some core channels. And what happened is, those traditional channels drove value for organizations. They were expensive technologies. They were expensive investments to support and build a core expertise internally, and therefore they tended to be something that corporate marketing built. Corporate marketing invested in email service providers or in a process to distribute, direct mail. And so they kind of centralized the investment in the technology initially because it was expensive and it needed to exist there. And so, you kind of saw these large-scale investments in on-premise solutions, and we didn't have, this is kind of circa the digital kind of exploding and SaaS and on-demand finding its own. And then the digital realm, and this is the red dot, really exploded, and we not only had, kind of this abundance of websites and email and digital displays and SEO and all these different channels, but what also happened is on-demand made it very affordable and easy for local marketers to invest in niche solutions, and even for corporate. So then you had kind of a high degree of customization that was required to support those local efforts. Well, guess what? If I need this customization and corporate isn't giving it to me, I can invest in tools to do it. And that's exactly what started happening. You swipe a credit card and you get these marketing tools. And so, ultimately, the challenge here is those traditional tools, none of them were built for kind of a core distributed marketing function where, corporate could see visibility, local had some autonomy, and what has actually happened is organizations have come full circle. If you're on the phone today, you realize we need to be orchestrating our customer experience better and more effectively. And so the difference between a localized marketing platform and an email service provider or a marketing automation tool is the email service provider is actually designed for a single core entity. It's largely designed for a corporate marketing function, not necessarily for localized marketing or for a local affiliate. Same thing with marketing automation. So you still see investments in these tools that aren't necessarily designed to do this effectively. Well, today there are localized marketing platforms that give the local affiliates autonomy. They allow corporate marketing to create branded templates that can be locked down and also customized by those local affiliates. And that centralizes your workflow, compliance, approval, centralizes performance, etc. And so the difference that you see between kind of corporate marketing and those standalone investments, and I know this is an eyesore, and I would encourage you to come back at the recording or get a copy of the deck. Bottom line, a campaign management technology is not designed for, the traditional campaign management is not designed for those local marketers, which is why you see a tremendous amount of kind of corporate locking things down and saying, we got to centralize it here. You can do it, but it requires a lot of customization, a lot of expertise, and it's very challenging. So, recommendations here I want to share. 94% of top performers tend to customize marketing materials at the local level. And you got to ask yourself, 9 out of 10, that's pretty consistent for top performers. If they're customizing those local materials, how are they actually doing it? Well, 80% deploy brand compliant templates managed by corporate, and they're for localized customization. You can go in, customize text, collateral, words and images and video and everything else, landing pages. Very powerful to give local marketers some autonomy. And then we saw about 58% of top performers allow local marketers to execute campaigns independent of corporate. I mean, what this is telling us is that there's some level of autonomy and trust that corporate is able, from a top performer standpoint, that corporate is able to have with those local marketers. And the one thing that I would also layer into this is some of these localized marketing tools actually allow corporate marketing to manage and execute campaigns on behalf of local marketers. And it's not something that we can measure because adoption is just up and coming. The capabilities are largely new in some of the next generation solutions that are out there. Distribuon has it, but it's just something that you really kind of, if local marketers aren't ready to actually execute their own campaigns or they don't have the ability to, you can still make it seem like the brand is doing that. You can still allow them to help centralize their lists and their target audience, but allow corporate to take that over. Okay, and then simplicity. How do we manage simplicity from a personalization standpoint? Well, the number one challenge with personalization is expertise. You need access to trusted data. You need to develop copy and creative. You need to configure the campaigns. All these different things that go into personalization. And for local marketers, one of the things we saw as a major challenge, number 2 challenge, was that the local affiliates or entities didn't have the expertise. Maybe corporate actually did, but local marketers did not have that expertise to do this well. So we have to make it easier for them. So I've got a list of recommendations here that I think are really powerful from a simplicity standpoint. Number 1, I think if you're going to make this simple, you have to limit your dependence on data. Personalizing the salutation of an email or even contact information for your sales rep, saying, hey, here's your sales rep, Mr. Customer, that you should reach out to. That is very powerful and it's not very hard to do. A lot of organizations still rely on salutation as a means of personalization, and it has a very powerful role. So you're not sending a generic message to everyone. You're actually personalizing something in that message. That's important, and it checks the box if you're doing that better. You want to depend on your local marketers to build the relationship with the target audience, and then corporate should be reinforcing that with the overall brand. To the extent that you can, even if you need to manage it in corporate and make it seem like your local marketers are engaging, they're going to have the expertise to target and put the right images and copy and stuff together, and then allow corporate to kind of take on the execution of those campaigns. But you want to rely on them. Go after the low-hanging fruit first. You want to improve those core channels that marketers are comfortable with. In many cases, your organization is really, really good at 1 or 2 channels, and that's fine. So look at how you can do a better job in those 1 or 2 channels, because it gets really uncomfortable for marketers to explore emerging channels like social or mobile. So just do a better job with what the core channels that everyone's comfortable with, and then take baby steps towards some of these other emerging channels. Keeping it simple, don't get distracted by one-to-one personalization. I think that a lot of marketers will say, oh, I'm going to put this on the back burner because honestly I got a lot to do before I can start personalizing. You can take little steps to reduce the volume of generic communications that are going out. You can, segmentation and targeting is a form of scalable personalization. If you can target by industry or by, individual or by their demographic or family or income or whatever, that is a form of personalization. You're delivering a more relevant message to them. So don't think of this as, I've got to tell, this guy that he bought these pants last week and he should buy these shoes because they're the same color of those pants. That's not the level we need to be at. Stay focused by limiting personalization efforts. Pick 3 to 5 core customer personas and then develop campaigns around those. It can be overwhelming to think about how do we focus our personalization efforts. There's so much we can do. Why don't you just go determine 3 or 4 or even 2 core customer personas that are profitable, that are loyal to you, and then go do a better job personalizing with individuals that look like them, or even your own customers so that they're even more loyal based on that personalization. And then learn the difference between multi-channel and orchestration. Multi-channel is the execution of, and it's a nebulous definition, but the one thing I want to address here is multi-channel can be execution of separate fragmented campaigns across different channels, right? Different message through email. Oh, we've got a different message in our display ad campaign. We've got a different message in our mobile or our social presence. Just start to think about orchestration. Can we reinforce the same communication across all these different channels? That's going to be really important. Definitely consider technology options with a rapid time to value. Software as a service is a very compelling option. It's affordable. It's quick. You can roll out the solution in phases through your different regions and local entities, but it's a very powerful option these days to try this out in an easy, risk-free way. You want to give local marketers templates that they can use to personalize, but you don't want to kind of customize and provide so many options that those templates become unusable. That's something we have seen, that kind of corporate can define so many different options and drop downs that the template is just overwhelming and the local marketer can't do anything with it. So I think it's just something to think about as you start to invest in technologies that do this better for you. And then pick 2 to 3 standard metrics that you can measure. Remember, you can only benchmark a metric if you're measuring it the same way over time. So you can kind of rely on the technology to do that, but you really have to be, and it doesn't matter that it's not the exact right way for your organization to measure. Just find something that is unique, that can be measured and standardized over time. Top performers use response rates and revenue. It's very easy to measure upticks in revenue based on campaigns that are going out, or the response rates on those campaigns. All right, so top 7 takeaways, and I'm going to just quickly go through them. Fragmented technologies are crippling your personalization efforts. So you want to start looking at reeling those in and centralizing to a core system that's designed for distributed marketing or a localized marketing environment. You can send more communications if they are personalized, and you won't fatigue your customers. Very powerful message. That's some kind of new research that's emerging, and we'll see where that goes. Customers should be dictating which channels you prioritize. Top performers tend to rely on local marketers to engage and understand the local target audience in a more relevant way. Local marketers lack expertise, so simplicity is key. Corporate needs to support that and maybe take on some of the ownership there with templates and providing different templates for different channels. You want to prioritize on segmentation, and I call it micro-segmentation, but that's a scalable form of personalization. It's already kind of similar to what you're doing today if you're sending generic messages. You're just parsing that down into some core demographic groups and then delivering a more relevant message. And then those 3 pillars: strategic, scalable, and simple. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim now and just talk a little bit about Distribuon.
Thank you, Ian, for a terrific presentation. Hello again, everybody. My name is Tim Storr, and I'm the President and CEO of Distribuon. Before we jump into the Q&A session, I'd like to just take a few minutes and introduce Distribuon. Distribuon is a local marketing automation software solution provider that helps organizations better support their local producer networks. In short, we help organizations overcome the challenges Ian just spoke about. We service many industries and currently have over 150 customers with over 180,000 local producers using our technology on a daily basis. We attribute a lot of our success to the shift that is happening in the marketing space. Today, everyone knows that customers favor more personalized messaging from people within their local communities. We also know that in order to reach customers, you now have to deliver that messaging across more communication channels than ever before. This leaves companies asking the question, how can we provide our local producers with the ability to distribute personalized messaging to local audiences across all these communication channels while still protecting our brand and ensuring corporate compliance standards are being met? That's where we come in. We provide an easy to use distributed marketing platform that allows the home office to upload marketing materials, establish access, customization, and delivery parameters around those materials, and then market those materials out to their local producers. Local producers then log in, select and personalize the materials, and click to have them instantly distributed out to their local audience. Distribion's distributed marketing platform is easy to use but very rich in features. It has the most complete offering on the market today and provides an end-to-end integrated marketing solution that addresses all marketing communication channel needs. Now I want to turn to our audience for a question and answer session. So please use your chat feature to submit any questions you may have. There's already quite a list. So if time doesn't allow us to answer all of these questions submitted today, I'll personally follow up via email. We've got some great questions here, and by far the number one question that we've been asked so far: will the slides be available after today's webinar? Absolutely, we are recording the webinar. We will make it available for your reference, so no worries there. Next question. Are there ways to automate campaigns that include email, social, print, and more? I think this might get to one of the points Ian made earlier about the difference between multi-channel and orchestration. I'll answer it first from Distribion's perspective, and then Ian, feel free to chime in. But yes, the Distribion platform has what we call campaign bundling, where a marketer can schedule a 360-degree campaign for a local agent to either run themselves or opt in and have them sent on their behalf by corporate marketing. In other words, these are multi-channel orchestrated campaigns that will go out to a target list that might hit them with an email message. There might be some social content that goes across that agent's network in unison with that message. Print campaign can be dropped maybe 5 days later after that email goes out, et cetera, et cetera. So we definitely have those types of capabilities built into our platform that really allows for that type of action to take place. But I think that really, Ian, any thoughts on that? I think that question really does tie back to that multi-channel and difference between multi-channel execution and really orchestration.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say is we've kind of come full circle, and I've been covering the space for 10 years now, and there have been a lot of changes. But initially, marketing asset management, we used to call it marketing asset management. Now we refer it as localized marketing automation. But the system was designed for kind of an asset approach or a digital asset management approach where you kind of customize collateral and print materials. And it is now morphed into kind of the multi-channel platform where you can execute from different channels. And what that means for your organization is, in many cases, even corporate might not really understand the nuances of direct marketing or digital marketing. And so the systems, when they have these capabilities, and they're fairly new, I mean, we're starting to see increasing adoption because, and it's driven by the fact that local marketers don't feel comfortable sending some of these campaigns. They'll load their lists, and they'll have a workflow and compliance that says, hey, I want to check over anything that's going out to my customers or my prospects, but the ability for corporate to kind of take on that expertise, because oftentimes corporate has relationships with agencies and some really great resources that do a good job at digital, but this allows it to make it scalable in the local setting. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in our system, particularly when there's a multi-channel or orchestrated campaign bundle that's all set up, the user of the platform can simply go in and literally answer questions once they've gone through and done that and provided some personalization to the campaign, thumb through, see all the various different communication channel content that's going to go out across those channels. So here's what the direct mail piece will look like. Here's what the email campaigns are going to look like. Here's the social posts that are going to go out across your networks. And then see the timing on how those all kind of lay out within one another in a very easy to use context, where once they've done that, they click a button and then all of that just really gets executed instantaneously according to that timeline that's already been waterfalled, if you will, or established by corporate. To Ian's point, we also have the ability in our platform to provide the OBO capability, or on behalf of, where the agent doesn't even really have to be involved to even that degree. They can simply go in, they have their profile all filled out, and then they just opt in for corporate to really market and execute those campaigns on their behalf. And then they just really want the report that shows, here's the campaign that went out, here's the response rates on the campaign, and here's the people that are more inclined to be a higher success rate from a contact perspective. So in other words, we can apply some scoring criteria across possibly their list based upon the interactions that they've had with those campaigns. So a lot of capabilities there that we could explore further if you'd like us to.
Yeah, one other thing that just popped up as we were talking about that is the preference management, and it's a really important nuance, and the ability to kind of, the only way to manage preference and fatigue is if you have a centralized platform. So that prevents you from local marketers sending a campaign that corporate already sent, and that the same person getting the same campaigns from multiple entities. You have to centralize it. And so what's nice about that kind of core system of record that corporate is overseeing is you can put business rules in there that say, oh, this person already received a message from us 2 weeks ago. It's too soon to get this one, or it's a good time to send it. So that's really important to think about. I'm glad someone asked that.
Great. Next question. We definitely need a solution to help our local sales channels conduct better campaigns. Any suggestions on how to best position such a solution for budget approval? I think it's a great question. In fact, I'm going to start off with Ian here, because I know Ian recently published a white paper that covers this topic very well. Ian, would you mind providing your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have one on building a business case for localized marketing automation. And there's two things that I want to address in that question, because it's a deep question. But one of them is this idea that brand marketing isn't necessarily used to being a champion for investments in technology that will have an impact, across the entire organization. So there's kind of the change management components. There's the different stakeholders that are involved. You're not just talking about the brand marketing team. You're talking about, interfacing with the CFO, the CIO, possibly the CEO to help justify the initiative and the spend. And so you kind of need to consider those things. And in doing so, you get two benefits from these solutions, and they're critical. Top line benefits, which are increased personalization, will drive increased revenue for your organization, and bottom line benefits, which are the productivity gains that you get from centralizing, from building in the workflow, and kind of the efficiency gains. And both of those have metrics and real costs associated to them that can help you build an ROI model or a return on investment model for the investment. So.
In addition to Ian's comments, I'd also say that at Distribuon we can help in a few ways as well. We provide what we refer to as a demo sandbox that you and your colleagues can play with to get a feel for how the solution actually works. We like to ensure that there's a hands-on experience. You get to go in there and play with it a little bit, understand how it works, really see how easy it can be, because as we've gone through this presentation today, you can see there's obviously a lot of complexity associated with supporting local marketing effort. And we like to really provide a sandbox experience to really show how that's gonna work within your organization. One step further up from that, we can provide what we refer to as a quick start program. And a quick start program is something where we provide a 90-day hands-on application of the solution, such that we get in there, we meet with you, we understand what are some marketing campaign initiatives that you're looking to accomplish over the next 2 to 3 months, and then we go ahead and take those initiatives and execute them out through our solution, so that the organization can really get hands-on experience and real live data, if you will, in regards to how the solution performed, and that will help build that better that business case. And then lastly, we can also provide you access to an online calculator where you can input a few parameters about your business, and it'll project cost savings as well as a projected return on your investment by adopting a local marketing automation software solution such as ours. So, in short, we're happy to provide a wide array of options for you to consider that might help you build that business case. And then lastly, we're always happy to share client references where you can hear directly from our customers, something that we're very proud to and happy to do. Next question. How do I use my data within a solution like Distribuon's? I guess since that one's tailored directly to us, I'll go ahead and answer this. But Ian, feel free to chime in. There are a lot of ways to incorporate data within a distributed marketing platform. I'll speak to ours specifically, but with regards to ours, you can upload data directly or use our API that can integrate with common data sources such as Salesforce.com or Microsoft Dynamics, Pivotal, etc. Obviously, CRM integration is something that's really important, because back to that cadence management that Ian was talking about, you really need to have everything working together in unison, because it's that fragmentation that really leads to those inefficiencies and where you might be communicating on top of yourself. We also provide integration with our API with other sources such as Google Analytics, Omniture, some of the major data providers out there as well, if you need to append your list or get more attributes on your list. So, at Distribuon, we've always really strived to ensure that our solution can work in unison with other rich data sources so as to provide marketers with the largest and most meaningful data set possible. Let's see here.
I want to layer in one element to that.
Go ahead.
And that's the idea that you have to, from a personalization standpoint, your local affiliates and the folks who are logging into the system, their data changes a lot. And so, one of the things that's really cool about these technologies is it allows them to manage their own data. People get promoted, people change and move different roles.
Hey, Ian, I'm sorry, just real quick, you cut out on us just for a brief second there. Could you just start that over?
Yeah, sure. So I was going to say, one of the things that's very cool, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
To make sure, I just fiddled with the cord. One of the things that's really interesting about these systems is within a local setting, you have resources that, maybe sales and maybe the affiliate themselves, they're constantly changing. And these solutions allow you to kind of log in and manage that aspect, that personalize, if it's here's the sales rep that you should be talking to on the landing page, or that individual can manage their own contact information and their own social presence, etc. in these systems. So it's not corporate having to deal with that, and that's really important because it builds it down to the lowest common denominator, which is where you really need to be managing this, because your local affiliates are they're huge. I mean, it can be a lot of different organizations that have different resources logging in and personalizing campaigns. So, it may not just be the customer data itself, but your organization, as a whole, and how you represent yourself that you need to manage. And LMA solutions allow you to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great response. Thank you for that. Everybody, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. It is at the hour. Please do rest assured that if you did submit a question and we didn't have a chance to answer it during the session, we will be following up with you upon the conclusion of this webinar. So, in summary, thank you all for joining us for this webinar, and thank you, Ian, for a very insightful presentation. Each of you who attended today's webinar will receive a link to the recorded webinar as well as the individual slides for your reference. So with that, thank you again, and we're going to go ahead and sign off.
Great. Thanks, everyone.